I could be looking at it.
Is that Cliff? Is that Cliff? Oh my God, let me see a picture.
This is 4th of July, 1947, Colonel Palmer giving a speech. These are all that 4th of July. They flew in two planes.
Oh, jeez, landed on the playground.
Right on the playground. There he is coming in.
Oh, man.
And that's part of the 4th of July celebration. I think there's
Oh, yeah, man.
48 guns.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
water.
Oh, these are awesome.
That's the pilot that flew the planes in.
Man.
The one pilot did both planes. This is the barracks up the end of the parade ground.
Is that the other end? This end?
Yeah,
Is that the man barracks?
I don't remember. Are these still there? The old World War I?
They are, but they're underground. They're very.
Oh, okay.
What happened was there was a liability exposure for the town
Sure.
when it took over,
Okay.
and so they actually this one is still exposed, so you can see it. The other side of it is not,
Right.
and a couple of the other ones are completely buried as well. But I can show you when we walk around.
That's at the NCO club where the non-commissioned officers get together nights.
Did they serve only Pepsi?
Yeah. It's supposed
Yeah,
there was a
just like Paella.
there was a designation of what the content of the beer could be, and they continually got criticized that they'd go over that.
Like 3% or
Yeah,
6% alcohol or something?
Somebody paid somebody to get a little extra alcohol in there.
23rd of May, 1946, there was a railroad strike in Boston, and they called us up to go down to keep things in order. There's the trucks all lined up, ready for us to get on board to go to Boston. And here's some of the guys that were.
Oh, these are so great, but gosh.
And, this is the only picture I brought of myself.
That's you?
Oh,
Okay.
Getting ready to go to Boston.
Go to Boston, not for Red
But
Sox.
they,
game.
fortunately, they settled before we hit the road.
How long were you here?
2 years.
1940.
46. From early 40s, maybe more like 18 months, I don't know. Early 46 to late 47.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe more like 18.
Was this your first station in the Army?
It was.
Yeah.
And,
So you were 18?
and Paul thinks I should tell you the story about
Yes, you should.
why I got here.
Yes, you should.
Well, I was drafted. Okay, I'll go back one step further at Paul's request. When I was in high school, I loved to hunt, and I had a buddy that loved to hunt. And he said, "Cliff, let's go hunting tomorrow." Well, it happened.
Where were you? Where did you
South Royal High School.
Vermont.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Excuse me.
And so I asked my father if I could. I said, "When wants to go hunt tomorrow?" And he said, "Well, you can go hunting tomorrow as long as you get back in time for band practice tomorrow night." He said, tomorrow night band practice? Yeah. Well, as long as you back for band practice. Now, my father had two interests in that. One is he and my mother were very good musicians and played in the high school orchestra when they were there. They were music was very important to them. That's why he wanted me to be back for band rehearsal.
Yep.
And secondly, he was didn't have to serve in World War I because he was involved in Lubring, and it was a war effort that that excused him from going into the service. Well, anyway, my buddy and I went hunting, and we decided to split up and go into two areas, and had a point that would be time and place where we were going to meet.
Sure.
Well, I was at this appointed time, and place. Nobody there. I waited, kept looking at my watch, waited, getting close to band rehearsal time, and the location was a remote location back in the woods. Well, I finally scratched a message in the dirt saying that I'd gone back. And I went back, and I got to school just as the band was breaking up. So at supper that evening, Father said, "So you went go hunting today?" "Yeah, we went hunting." "Did you get back from band practice?" "No." Says, "When your time to go into service, you'll go into service." No question. That was it.
It was decided.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Was
And
that
now
your,
we were still in the lumber business, and he had a lot of men deferred from going into service because it was a war effort. All the lumber was going to a war effort, and I could have stayed and worked right along with him in that. No, when your time comes, sure.
Wow.
All right, that's a long way around to your question. How did I come to get to Fort Williams? So I went into basic training down in Alabama, and I was drafted. And come to find out, the whole company down there that I was being taken basic in was drafted. And they came around and they said, "Anybody here that signs up for 2 years, we'll guarantee that you'll be discharged in 2 years." Nobody raised their hand. I raised my hand. I think I would go for that. So, got all my paperwork done, or, no, I back up, I didn't get all the paperwork. That was just before basic finished. The rest of the trip, company went to Europe. I left at basic. My paperwork hasn't come through for my signing up for regular Army. They all left. I spent 2 weeks there waiting for the paperwork to be processed. And finally one day they came to me and everything's done. You're all set. You're going to go on the train. Okay. I said, where do I get off? "Well, there'll be somebody there to tell you when to get off." Okay, so right on the train, 2 days from Alabama to Portland, Maine, because we had to stop. We had to stop for every other train that came.
Oh, yeah.
And finally they said, "Here's where you get off." Okay, there's a vehicle there, and they brought me out to the fort and introduced me to the payroll clerk who was just being discharged in 2 days. So he gave me 2 days instruction on that payroll. And so that's how I came to be here at Fort Williams.
Now, Paul said there were about 700 guys here when you were
Yeah.
here?
We had the whole. It was the whole of. It served everything. Even the Air Force base up. Where's that up north?
Oh,
is
yeah.
that Dow Air Force Base or Loring?
Well,
Loring Air Force Base?
Probably Loring. Yeah. We had the whole area to do the payroll.
so all branches?
This is Paul Disney, which doesn't mean much except his uncle was Walter.
That means so.
Really? Is that true?
And he was in the next. There were 3 of us in this office in the front corner of that building. Paul and Sergeant Smith. Well, I don't know what his job was, but he was above us. We were just corporals, and he was a sergeant.
Okay.
And so he was over us. But Paul had did the officers, all the paperwork for the officers. I did paperwork for the enlisted people.
Wow.
And remained a good friend for a long time. He was from Louisville, Kentucky,
Uh-huh.
and he made several trips back here with he and his wife would come up summer's vacation, always came here to the fort. On the 16-inch gun out at Peaks, there's you can see the
Individual.
guy standing there.
Imagine how big that was.
16-inch gun out on,
Wow.
the biggest ones here at Fort Williams were 12s. There were 2 12s, and the rest of them were 10s and
They
6s.
claim they only fired that once and broke half the windows in Portland.
My dad grew up just up the road here in South Portland, and the Army, when they were going to test the guns here at Fort Williams, they had to notify the neighborhoods that they were going to be doing it so that people would crack their windows open so they wouldn't
Yep.
break from the percussion.
Where's one of the? Well, this is fine. No, I have to worry.
Yeah, that was
Okay, yeah. That was the next to last one up here.
Okay.
That, yeah.
Yeah, I know right where you were.
And this one is the head one up to the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the one overlooking the pond there was the band barracks. And I don't know if it was there when you were there, when the 5th Infantry was here. They had their band halls stationed in that
Sure.
barracks.
No, we overlook, I mean, this whole row overlooks the,
The playground.
overlooks the goldfish pond.
Yeah, yeah.
That was your sleeping arrangements, would you?
Oh, wonderful.
A whole bunch of guys in one big room?
Yeah, but you couldn't, I mean, the brick barracks to begin with, steam heat, of course it was all central heated from a coal-fired boiler room down below here. But perfect, and the chow hall was in the down, not the basement, first floor.
Yeah, we have a couple of pictures. One of them is of the mess hall, and it's all decked out for the holidays. It had to be Thanksgiving and Christmas. They had decorations all over.
I wish I had a picture of that.
I'll swap pictures.
Of the cook.
Oh, of the cook, okay.
No.
He was a older guy, but he could put on at the holidays. We always had great meals.
Yeah.
At holidays.
And we have another picture of the inside of the barracks with all the cots.
Okay, that would
Yeah.
answer Paul's question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a little confession to make there.
Here we go.
Yes, they were all cots, all this from a big room and one nail coming off it. But they had been used quite a bit, so they sagged. Well, I'm not, or what, I'm better at getting up in the morning in my later years than I was back then. And there's the one that shows the front of the guys. Yeah, I should have it sorted out better. This would be all. Yeah, well, that's fine. That'll. Either one of these, whatever. Anyway, Reveille was everybody get it out in front of their barracks, and they'd call off the roll, or roll call of Reveille. Well, lots of times people might not be there at Reveille. But always, when the roll call was made, everybody said, "Up, up, up, up," as they called each name.
Yeah.
They'd answer. Well, I was quite often absent from there. My bunk sagged enough that I could lay down there with a pillow on my head, and they always came through the barracks, checked, make sure nobody left in the barracks. They never caught me.
You were still in bed.
I was still in bed with a pillow on my head.
I
But it would sag down, my bike would tight, play another, not get caught.
Yeah.
So,
What time of day was revelry? What time?
I presume Saturday,
Oh,
I
right.
don't know.
Yeah.
I would say.
So, did you have to do a lot of drilling, you know, inventory
We
type drilling?
did not do a lot of drilling. The majority of the time for most of these men that were there were cleaning duties. You might as well say. I mean, everything had to be clean. The guns had to be clean. All the buildings had to be clean. Light grounds had to be clean.
The nurse that we interviewed for our history project, she was here during World War II, and she said, "You're right. There were sticklers for everything. It couldn't even be a cigarette butt on the ground."
No, it was,
So she said the girls would smoke cigarettes, and then they'd roll the cigarettes in there, and the tobacco would go out. The tobacco was left, and then they'd swallow the paper.
Oh,
They'd
no.
swallow the paper, so there'd
Yeah.
be no
Oh, very healthy exercise.
no litter on the.
no, but you bring up a thought that as part of my feeling about the fort was its complete sustainability for itself. I mean, yes, the brick barracks, wonderful living quarters, love it, excellent kitchen, the new movie theater, the church. I didn't bring a picture of the church, but
Yeah, we had pictures of the church, and that burned due to arson.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I don't know. The bell was separate from a church
Yeah.
set up on the knoll.
Yeah.
There was dry cleaner on site.
Bakery, yeah.
Yeah, and what's the movie theater? 15 cents to go to movies.
Outrageous. That's
So we
outrageous.
had a library, wonderful library. And at the headquarters building, that's anyway where I was. The back on the opposite corner from where I was was where they had where the radio room was, and the dark room. It was a full
Photography studio.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And I could had the key, so I could go in the headquarters building at a time of day, and I could go in and work in the dark room. All these pictures were done right in that dark room there.
Okay, Cliff, tell us about your payroll functions. Were personnel paid in cash?
They were $20 bills.
And so you'd have a lot of money arrive.
Okay,
Not here.
the finance officer
You were
was in charge of the cash.
Here it is, here it is.
Okay.
Tyron, he handled the cash. They pushed having buying war bonds with part of your payroll. I kept buying $50 a month war bonds every month. But you had to have those deducted from your pay.
Yeah.
And so you didn't have to buy a full bond. You have $5, $10, whatever you want, apply to it, and then you'd get the bond when you had it paid for. So I had to keep track of where they were on the war bond payments. Their GI insurance, had to keep track of that, and anybody that had a finance issue that needed to have money drawn ahead on their pay, I had to keep track of that. And I did this, well, I kept track of it all on 3x5 cards. I had 3x5 file cards, and then at the end of the month, I had to type all that up onto a sheet to give to the payroll payee to dish the cash out, how much each one was owed. But along those same lines, another project was just keeping track of the personnel themselves, not just their pay. And a precursor to the computer age was being used in the service at that time. Every soldier had a Form 20, and the Form 20 was about this size, and it had punch holes all four sides of it.
Mhm.
And you had a punch, and for each trait that person had, or whether he was white, whether he went to church, or whether he could type, or whether he could any quality that person had, there was a hole that pertained to that. And you take your punch and you
Wow.
cut that notch out.
Yeah,
So they'd come to me and they'd say, we need such person for such and such a job. All right. So I'd stack all those Form 20s in a box and take a wire rod and push through, and anybody that was qualified that dropped out of that. So
gee,
you
wow,
could sort any need
yeah,
or any qualification that
Different skills.
Yeah.
that
now you mentioned before it was pretty much self-sustaining. Where did the food come from? Did they deal with local farmers, do you know, or?
I don't know the answer to that
Yeah.
question. I don't. It doesn't.
Probably had their own food chain through the army.
I would say so.
Yeah, yeah,
But that cook could come up with
yeah,
with wonderful meals of what he had.
yeah.
And I often think of the fact that he would be down there like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, getting ready for breakfast, and he'd be there for the evening meal.
All day.
I don't know. He must have just catch cat naps.
Yeah.
And 7 days a week.
Did you get
Same
much?
time.
Did you get much leave time?
Well,
Well, you could go into Portland or
I did.
yeah.
And according to my position, I was given a Class A pass, so I could leave at any time,
Wow,
and so I was free.
that came in handy.
You had to work Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
and then you told me that you would often go home by bus
Well,
back to
once-
Vermont.
Once a month I could legitimately take off a third day. I could have a 3-day weekend, so that's when I
You
could
could get home.
usually once a month.
And by bus,
I-
going by bus.
So that was
Yeah.
basically a day home, a day back, and a day there.
Yeah,
So,
Along this end wall
Yeah.
was a row of file cabinets, and it was getting hard to put paperwork in them because they were getting full. They'd been there forever, as far as I know, and it seemed that way when you're looking in there for stuff. Of course, you had the Dewey Decimal filing system. Everything was, you had to designate the Dewey number to whatever piece of paper you were filing. And so I thought, boy, there's got to be a lot of stuff in here from ages ago. We could make room in this file so it wouldn't be so hard to crowd the next sheet of paper in there. And so we had a teletype office was probably this first window around to the right,
Uh-huh.
and right next door to us. And so I had them teletype down to Washington to get permission to reduce those files. And they sent a message back, we allow you to I thought we could throw some away. And a lot of this can't be any need for it. You can throw anything away in those files, but make 3 copies of each one before you.
Of course.
This is government work.
And another part of the self-sustaining for as far as the office in here went down in the basement below us was the printing room, and we were using you called the name of it.
Mimeographs?
Yeah, I guess that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a hand crank?
You type up on this gelatin
Yeah.
Yeah, a master, yeah.
Xerox.
mask and put it on your thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So all of everything, there were forms there for anything that you could
Yes.
imagine.
In triplicate.
Well, they had forms made ahead
Yeah.
for everything standard down there, but they had the masters for anything that.
And tell us what the primary intent of the fort was. I understand that there was a huge shipbuilding activity in South Portland. You told us on the way over here that all of the guns, all of the cannons on Fort Williams were World War I vintage.
Well,
And
that's,
tell us a little bit about the cannons and the function of the fort.
well, the function of the cannons were at that time were the bulk of our harbor defense in Portland was the islands.
Mm-hmm.
The government bought up a lot of those islands out there in the bay.
Yeah.
They had an auction afterwards, sold them off. Some of the islands went for 50 cents.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Fort Williams was part of a network of fortifications
Yeah.
around Castle Bay.
Preble,
Preble and McKinley and
McKinley. Yeah.
Gorgeous,
And we-
not so much.
McKinley had people. Fort Preble didn't have any. When I was there, didn't have personnel. But McKinley did have, and
Yeah.
we served their payroll as well.
It was,
There at Fort Williams.
Fort Leavitt out on Cushing Island.
You know,
That might have been gone by the time you were here.
sounds familiar.
Yeah,
But Peaks was
yeah, Battery Steel.
the big one.
Mhm.
But I got to visit several of the islands with the smaller emplacements. There were other besides this. I might, in case the rest of you didn't get it. There is a man standing by that there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw
Shows you how
it.
big the gun is. Were there lookouts on land
Yeah.
24/7? And were there patrol boats off the shore? And you're looking for submarines?
Not under our
Yeah, Navy.
You bring up a point though. We did have as is designated on one of the plaques with the headlight. We did have a German U-boat come in,
Yeah,
and when you talk about the patrol boats, they sent the sub-chaser out from Portsmouth.
mhm.
They never came back.
Yeah, that USS Eagle. We are having the guy that turned that story around come speak to our historical
Okay.
society. When that was sunk, the Navy was quick to say it was a boiler explosion. But there were survivors from that, and that didn't sit well with the survivors. They said that doesn't make sense. So this guy's name's Paul Lawton. He's an attorney from Massachusetts. He started investigating. He interviewed the survivors. He went over to Germany, and the Germans, for whatever, they were very good at keeping records,
Yes.
and they wouldn't destroy them. So he got to look. This is all after the war and everything.
Sure.
He got to look at all these records, and found and they identified the U-boat that sunk this USS Eagle
With a torpedo.
with a torpedo.
Yeah.
And the boiler on the ship was intact.
Yeah. It was not.
It was not a boiler explosion.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
quite a few
fascinating
people
story.
died in that though.
Yeah, it was like 49 I think died, and 13 survived, I believe.
And where was the ship upon being attacked?
It was only about 3 miles offshore. That ship was a World War I vintage ship, but in World War II it was used as a utility boat that hauled targets out from Portland. So the dive bombers and fighter planes from Brunswick Naval Air Station could practice out on the water. And that's what it was doing when it was sunk.
And Cliff, you told us about a small guy going through the cannon and cleaning it.
Yeah.
But what was the function of the cannons, and tell us about maintenance of them and the ammunition and all of that.
Well, there's another, I had another photo of the powder, that's missing, that's just the missile there.
That's the shell that was,
Yeah, that's the bullet part, the powder was separate, I had a picture of it.
It's like in a bag.
Yeah, right. And there was a system of trolleys, well, it shows the chain there, to move them from they're separate rooms, powder room. Well, it shows several of them, so that they could pick those up and they'd travel along on a dolly out to the breech of the gun.
To be used, yeah.
Well, I lost track of half your question there. You had quite a lot.
well, what were,
Oh,
the personnel from Fort Williams would travel to the islands and maintain the guns and shoot the guns, fire
no,
the
they
guns?
didn't fire them. They didn't fire anything out there. The only guns I ever heard fired when we were here was at the 4th of July celebration. That have the pictures of
The
it.
Big Bang.
Were the guns ever used against the Germans? Were they ever used?
Not to my knowledge. The only things that were fired against the Germans, to my knowledge, was the sub chaser out of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Fired
Yeah, the guns at Fort
on the
Williams were
submarine.
never fired at an enemy, but they were
It
fired.
did. It came right up by here.
Yeah.
Went right into Portland Harbor, back out. It was a submarine.
I think you were talking about cleaning the cannon, you were starting.
Yeah, that was their function.
I mean, the
They
little
just
guy.
kept everything clean, kept everything ready so that it could be used.
But you
So-
said a small person actually went into the cannon, you're starting to tell that he went into the cannon?
Yeah, it's in the guy through there to clean it. This is one of the control rooms out at Peaks Island where, and I don't remember his name, did I read his name down here? It's Cantalupo. Italian. He's an 18-year-old, and he I didn't bring a picture of it, I guess, of the diesel power plants, but he had to run the diesel power plants that maintain the electricity out at Peaks Island, where this 16-inch gun picture is. Once a month he had to run those diesel plants for so many hours to make sure that they'd be ready. And everything was in readiness to be used at the moment. We had our own hospital, we had our own
Yes.
dentist office, had our own telephone office. They were in there with the old cord and plug.
Yeah.
Two operators had the whole fort there, 24 hours a day.
Tell us the month and the year that you arrived. Was that August of '46? About?
I don't know.
But the war got over. You told me about the war getting over.
Yeah, the war got over. Was it 46? I think it was, wasn't it? 45, no,
45.
August
I'm
45.
sorry, I got the wrong year.
Yeah, August 45
Yeah.
is when the war got over, and that's when I went in. So
And you told me at basic training down in Alabama, you were sort of specializing in training to fight the Japanese.
yes, somehow we got on a discussion coming over about how did that come about, Bonnie? About you were talking about
Using
school,
the same skills.
school.
Yeah.
Uh,
But your training was in fighting the Japanese and not
Well-
for the Korean War, right?
Well, my thought was that you picked up on something she's saying, the experience she had in
yeah.
teaching, where
I
they were
I taught a lot of grades.
separating, and I was thinking how the whole world is pitting different people against another.
Yeah.
And back at the end of the basic training that Paul was talking about, we were indoctrinated about how bad those Japanese were, and how you gotta kill them, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it just
Yes.
indoctrinated into you. It built you up so that you're ready to go over there and kill as many
Yeah.
as you
Brainwash
could.
it.
Yeah, my dad was in the Pacific during World War II, and after the war was over, he would not buy a Japanese car.
No,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
build up,
And
it's
buy
just,
American.
it
See why.
was just so intentional.
So it was September 2nd, 1945. It was the end of the war, World War II.
Okay,
And
September.
there must have been a celebration. Were you on at Fort Williams at that time on the
No,
notification?
I was in Barton, Vermont on that day. My cousin's house. I was up there to visit before I went into service. Were any of those that had been in the Sharon or Vermont area? There's a restaurant, there's known Brooksy's restaurant, that just burned not too long ago.
Wow.
And his sister and her husband lived in Barton, Vermont, and I thought, well, I'd like to go visit them before I go into service. And while I was there, I heard about the end of
Yeah.
the war.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I know exactly where I was that day. But that's not part of this.
Now, there were obviously Coast Artillery units here.
Yeah.
I know there was a military police unit here. Were there any other specialties? Were there?
Well, the
Infantry
whole function of Fort Williams was harbor defenses of
Right.
Portland. So,
Yeah.
so that was the overall. We were just considered part of the harbor defenses of Portland.
Yeah, I know George Palmer. He was here 2 different times, and he was Fort Commander twice.
Okay.
First time it was of Portland Harbor Defenses, and the second time he was head of the whole Maine military district,
Yeah,
all branches.
yeah.
And, so that was pretty interesting.
It was harbor defense when I was here. So,
How long was the military function here after the war? Did it get over in the 50s or 60s?
It wound down pretty quickly in the 1950s, and it actually closed. The Army left here in 1962,
Yeah.
but there wasn't much left here when
Oh.
they closed.
And the town acquires the acreage?
The town bought the acreage in 1963 and didn't do anything with it for more than a decade. And things went downhill fast. There was a lot of vandalism down here, windows broken,
Arson?
and arson, and
then they demolished all the brick buildings, all the bricks went to Boston, I think.
yeah, there was a gigantic debate about what to do with the fort, and there were several proposals that came forward. You know, anything from a shopping center to a college campus to, you know, you name it, and it was brought forward, and none of them seemed to gain enough traction with the town council to go forward, so they didn't do anything, and then finally let's make a park out of it.
Yeah, they've done a wonderful job.
Well, they have, and you know, in hindsight, that's probably the best thing they could have done is nothing, you know, at the time,
And
but it was painful to watch.
the photographer that photographed that perfect storm did an excellent job of it. I mean, that must have been something since the one that I photographed.
Yeah.
And today, Portland Headlight is maintained by the Coast Guard or
Well,
town?
the light itself is the Coast Guard. The property, the light tower and the keeper's house, keeper's quarters, and the outbuildings are all maintained by the town.
Now, is it still an active lighthouse?
Well, yes and no. Lighthouses have kind of outlived their
Right.
effectiveness, and
Right.
the beacon at the top of the light is nowhere near as powerful as it used to be. It's just kind of symbolic, I think, now.
Yeah.
The foghorn is operable, but to have the foghorn turned on, you as a boater have to ask the Coast Guard to turn it on. It doesn't run like it used to every time the fog came.
Right.
You'd hear the foghorn. I grew up with that.
Yeah.
And,
So I grew up
yeah,
there.
you did.
And while I mentioned the foghorn, you see that the building with the foghorn, no, the one next to it, that lighthouse,
Yeah.
the where the foghorn, that was ripped off in that storm. And this building has been changed from a wooden structure to a brick structure.
Correct, yeah. And when that building was destroyed by that storm in 1975, I was on the fire department. My dad was too, and we came down here because the fire chief wanted somebody to stand by to make sure there weren't tourists doing stupid things. It was a bad storm. And this was my first time driving a fire truck, and I was going about 10 miles an hour down Shore Road because I couldn't see anything. The rain was sideways, my windshield wipers going like this. And I pulled into the driveway of the lighthouse, would have been back in here, and there was literally a wave that broke about 2/3 up the way, way up the light tower. And I looked at my father, and he said, "Back up as far as you can. We'll just sit here." That's what we did. But
Well, it's
Wow.
amazing that the photographer was able to get pictures of that.
yeah, the next morning, the Press Herald, the Portland Press Herald photographer came and took pictures of all the debris all over the place. The chunks
But
of
somebody got a picture when the waves
wow
were
was gone.
crested.
Yeah.
It was at night, the year that it happened when I was there,
Yeah.
the time that ship broke.
Yeah.
So I didn't get it, but
I just had another storm down here within the last year, and it stove in a couple of these windows here and a door.
yeah,
It's
I had to
just,
imagine the waves going that high.
yeah.
To switch gears a little bit, I have a picture here of some ladies. Tell us about ladies coming on the grounds.
Well, they call it the hostess club. And they didn't come very often, but when they did, they were welcome. And they came to dance, and that's what we did. We danced. I think it was
Did you have any friends that ultimately got married to these lovely young women?
No, I don't believe it ever got to that point. But that was at the NCO club.
One of our interviewees was Frank Manduca, who had his band that he brought out here for dances at the
Okay.
NCO club. He was very interesting.
One, it doesn't have anything to do except that it's when I was here. In our hometown in South Royalton, we have a band person who was playing in one of the big bands, and they were coming to Portland, and I wanted to go in there to go to that dance that night, but I drew guard duty that night. So while my friend was playing with a big band somewhere in Portland, I was out at the gate. I didn't bring that picture. I did have a picture of him, and I do have a picture of him. I didn't bring that picture.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that relevant. But
Yeah.
When I was coming down here for Cub Scout meetings, the check-in wasn't very rigorous. The
no,
guy would come out of the guard shack there, and what are you here for? Cub Scout? You know, my father would drive and go for a Cub Scout meeting. Okay.
Go in and out.
Go ahead.
it's,
Different nowadays.
Mm. Well, different time, a long time ago.
no, but it was. I couldn't have asked better duty than to be.
Yeah,